Okay, so a couple months ago, I was in one of those manic Minecraft play sessions where you devote the week to literally nothing else, and then you put it down one day, and then just forget it exists for the next 8 months. But during that frenzy, I managed to find this Minecraft seed, and I could immediately envision a build kind of rising up through these peaks and, like snaking through this whole area. And, my brain was going, okay, I had some good ideas, but then my roommate accidentally set himself on fire again. And I was forced to forget about my visions of grandeur, at least for the moment, in favor of helping him extinguish. It kind of just sat in the recesses of my mind. That is until January 4th at 4:28 a.m., when apparently I was possessed by some sort of spell to memorialize what was obviously some life-changing ideas. But eventually, I did manage to interpret these mad ramblings as a call to make a subpar YouTube video documenting me building this frontier town. So yeah, I'm Belmarzi. Thanks for giving this video a chance. I mean, honestly, you've already demonstrated that you have far more faith in my ability to build this frontier town than I do, so let's not let those vibes go to waste and go ahead and get started with some compelling gameplay before you have a chance to click off this video. You know that saying, to overcome fear is the quickest way to gain your self-confidence? Yeah, well, I'm gonna overcome my fear of actually completing projects I start and just jump right into it. I started by making a list of what I consider to be the integral chunks, so to speak, of the cowboy lifestyle. You could see I included such historical accuracies such as magic well and big fantasy bones. Look, I'm not trying to trick you into thinking that fantasy magic is part of the frontier canon, but as long as it's a fantasy, I don't see why it can't just be my fantasy. Anyways, in the time it took for me to lament my own bad decision making, I also managed to draw this horrible map of, my vague building plans. I guess just to let you know that when I said big bones, I really meant it. I knew doing something like this would come in handy when halfway through the project I inevitably try to convince myself that the rest of the build should be steampunk fantasy or eco-brutalist architecture or something. I don't know, I have a habit of getting horribly off track, as you can probably tell just from this voiceover. So once I finished some basic terraforming over the whole area, I moved on to this part of my sketch. I originally intended for this to be a little tent marketplace, but I ended up making it an extension of the main road with some smaller buildings dotting on the side to kind of lead into the taller ones later on. I was also too lazy to fully re-terraform this spot, so instead of flattening everything, I decided to make this area on 2 levels with a path leading between them. Doing this little intro part of the town also kind of helped me get a building style nailed down. I mean, you can see I kind of strayed away from what might be considered the typical Wild West style in favor of introducing some more colors. This is mostly just because I thought working in neutral tones would make everything blend in too much. And also, I hadn't really worked with the new colorful wood variants yet in my survival world, and I thought this might be some good practice. Next, I focused on the more central town square area. Here, I really started leaning into more of a mining frontier town rather than a ranching one, so I guess I just have to say goodbye to my cowboy dreams. But I think it makes sense considering the giant cave that's in the back that we'll be tackling later. I added some industrial elements, but I still tried to maintain the idea that everything was a bit run down and thoroughly lived in. And by that, I mean I just added so many buttons and signs everywhere, that's my best way of showing that something's run down. So the focal point of this area and what all the buildings are kind of leading up to is the saloon, which definitely ended up looking nothing like a saloon, and there's absolutely nothing on the inside, but I'm still pretty happy with this. I just wanted a funky looking building that looked like it could be the social center of this town. I'll get back to the other walls in a bit. I just really needed to know what colors it would be so I could build up everything and make sure that the colors don't clash in the end. As time went on, it was becoming harder and harder to make new buildings that fit into the aesthetic without just flat out reusing identical block palettes. But I started using the state-of-the-art building method where I was just choosing random blocks and mashing them together until I had something semi-presentable. And, eventually I did finish the last few buildings, so I guess it worked out. Oh, and I had a chance to use a loom for the first time, and I made this highly advanced banner art. When it was time to return to the saloon, I realized it wasn't nearly as tall as I thought it would be, which I guess is kind of the downside of not really planning anything, but I do like the idea that this building is a little sunken compared to everything else. To me, it kind of started giving off a hole-in-the-wall vibe, which I feel like fits the idea of a saloon. After finishing this, I knew I could not put off the inevitable much longer. I had to start that skeleton. The thing is, I am notoriously bad at organic builds. And not only that, I can think of 4 separate times I've tried to build specifically giant skeletons in my builds, and each time I either make some unrecognizable mess or I give up halfway through. But no longer, okay? It's time to overcome this. And by that, I mean, I already recorded myself talking about the skeleton, which I think legally means I have to build it. Like, I don't want to go back on what I said. In other news, how's the video quality treating ya? Yeah, turns out it was a simple setting switch that fixed things. I tried so many things to fix the lagging frames before, but I guess I just thought I was smarter than the entire internet, because when my sheer intellect failed me, I kind of just gave up. I mean, I don't know why I didn't literally just Google my issue before, but c'est la vie, I guess. I don't know, I didn't take French in high school. Basically just feel lucky that I'm not subjecting you to such horrible visuals any longer. Like I said earlier, I first thought about making this at the beginning of January, and now it's March. There's been a period of 3 weeks or so where I just couldn't even bring myself to open Minecraft, but then I realized, who the hell is even waiting for me to post something other than myself? Like, obviously no one. Like, I could post this video 6 months from now and it wouldn't change a single thing. And once I realized that, I kind of started re-enjoying the process again. Like, I don't know why I was getting so stressed out to begin with. In that spirit, and as you can probably see, I decided to move on from the skeleton. I was so sick of placing white blocks. I just really needed a change of pace. I decided to finish up the town area instead, since these little buildings are pretty easy to improv. And most notably, I added a church and a little ranch farm building. I don't know why I just said I was finished building the town when I still had this entire section to do. Let's just call that wishful thinking, because the further I got into building this, the more I realized that I still hadn't thought at all about how I was going to deal with this whole cave situation. I knew I wanted this to be a mining frontier town, so there had to be something. And I eventually just decided to spruce it up with some lighting, stalactites, and minecart tracks. A groundbreaking, creative idea, I know, but the day I attempt to build any machines is the day I'll wither away and cease to be. It's just too much pressure to make something that resembles life, and as I'm sure you've gathered, I don't really think too much about reality while building. I'm looking at you, random small building on top of treacherous cliff. After that, I once again turned to the skeleton. There wasn't actually that much left, so I quickly built up the tail and moved onto the underneath. My idea was that this massive skeleton was used for the town because it provided nutrition for crops, which I feel would be pretty valuable in a desert. I also just needed something easy to put in this area and fill up space, and crops were a pretty good way to get that done. But then I realized that moss didn't grow over sand, and I realized I was going to have to start the excruciating process of changing out all the blocks by hand. I wish I could say this didn't take that long, but I kept taking breaks to go pet my dog, so it ended up taking a while. With that done, there were only a few small things to add. I fixed up the paths, added some general detritus, built these poor frontier folks a well, all that good stuff. And with the final piece of visual clutter placed, I was finally ready to call my town finished. Okay, that's enough beauty shots. I'm not that vain. Seriously though, thanks for watching. I'm hoping to post a couple more videos as the year goes on, just for funsies, but we'll see what happens. It's a bit of a struggle because I'm doing this on a MacBook, and every time I boot up Minecraft, it's like I'm personally contributing to global warming with the sheer heat of my underperforming laptop. And if for some reason that kind of content speaks to you, feel free to stick around. Hopefully I'll get another video out soon-ish. Spoiler, I might be discussing whether or not Minecraft builds should be considered art. But also I'm unreliable, so I wouldn't hold your breath.